Thank you, everybody who's here. A bit of the general info here. Um, Before I do introductions, you can feel free to ask any questions you want in the chat. Emily, who's here, will help manage that. And we appreciate questions. We love questions. It'll make this thing more fun. Before we get started, officially, I want to introduce Charlie. For those who don't know Charlie, I met him. I was trying to go through this yesterday, looking at old emails. We've been talking for at least 8 years. I can't remember how we met, but I remember what I was asking. I think it's some of the vendors were pointing me towards you. At the time, we had a lot of data. I was trying to get somebody who would look at our data, and either we were trying to develop a report or something like that, and the vendors were like, talk to Charlie Moran, talk to Charlie Moran. And I remember the first conversation that we had, you, you would look at some of our data and say, that's not an SIS. This is what, and you were brutally honest with everything we showed you. And we've kept talking ever since. So I'm going to let Charlie introduce himself and his great business. So there you go, Charlie.
Good afternoon, everybody, unless you're further west of us, in which case, good morning. Yeah, nice to meet you all. I'm the CEO of Moran Technology Consulting. We're kind of based out of Chicago, but around the United States, people are located. We perform advisory services, planning services for higher education, predominantly North America, but we've done projects in Australia and the Middle East and France and a few other places. Our focus of our business tends to be in the areas of technology strategy, ERP strategy, and we also help with a lot of procurements of help people put together requirements and write RFPs and help them negotiate contracts and all. And we have another half of our business that is like cybersecurity, looking at where you are, identity management, what's working, what's not, what are you trying to achieve, and then help through the process of getting up and running on an identity package. So that's really what our package is about. We are completing our 21st year of business, and which is great. And getting ready to go into number 22 and go from there. Back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. Before we start playing 20 questions with Charlie, I just want to give a lay of the land. So I'm going to share my screen and basically, so we all have the same starting point. Hopefully this works. You should be seeing sort of a graph here. So this is based on data that we have in our portal, which is basically showing us who the big players are. I'm looking specifically at the student market. It's the one that seems to move a little bit more. So you can sort of see from Banner, who's the main player here, and it goes all the way to smaller players. And I'm going to highlight maybe just Populi, who is probably focused on institutions under 800 students. But you have everything here from Workday, Thesis, and Homegrown, Power School, and all that great stuff. There's a few products here that are like Elevate, and I'm missing one, Sonus is probably one, that is for, I forgot, continuous learning. There you go. One thing that I want to highlight in this graph is one company sort of owns three of the biggest products. So Ellucian, if you put all these numbers together, I think it comes out to around 35 or 36% of the market is owned by this one vendor. And we'll get into this a bit later, but they look like they might be purchasing Anthology, so that brings up their numbers to around 45. So that's interesting from the point of view of one player will own almost half the market when it comes to North American student information systems. It's not unique in the sense that you have other big players. If we look at the LMS market, Instructure sort of has the same ballpark numbers there. So it is interesting from that point of view. Bit of history. Banner sort of historically fairly flat. You can see a few bumps here and there, but they're exactly the same bumps that you sort of see Colleague go down at the same point that Banner's going up. So they're just exchanging players. The others keeps going up. This is very much because of smaller players, especially for smaller schools being defined under maybe 1,500. They're the ones that are sort of moving this. Genzabar sort of slowly going down. We can talk about what they've been doing later, but PeopleSoft also quite flat. And the only player that's sort of moving up here is Workday. Just a note about our data here when it comes to Workday Student, these are often not full implementations. They're an institution has 2, 3 modules working from Workday Student, and that's why we count them. And the last slide before we get to Charlie is I really want to show the differences between enrollment size of institutions. Go to really big school, PeopleSoft sort of leads the way, followed by Banner, middle schools that sort of flips around. And when you get to smaller schools, you sort of see completely new players, the Genzabar, the Anthologies, Populi. They really pop up because this is sort of their bread and butter is in the smaller niche.
Nice.
Charlie, let's jump
Yes.
right into Anthology right away. I sort of wrote a blog post on what was happening there. There's a lot of talk about the money was a big issue. I sort of pointed to something else, which was basically it was 3 different silos within one company. They had 3 different business models and they were trying to merge everything together. What's your perception on this?
I mean, yeah, the money is the one that pushed them over the edge. Their struggle in the market, in our view, has been that their products are fairly good. They haven't been investing as much as you would like in new functionality, but they're constantly in trouble. Their products are almost always in trouble. They can't staff implementation. They don't have the right people. They don't have a methodology. They change executives about every year or so. I know in one period of time I was tracking, I'd been introduced to 8 vice presidents of implementation services in 7 years. And the last guy, I said, he says, well, you should get to know each other. I said, come back a year. So if you're still there on the second EDUCAUSE, and no one's ever come back in the second year, but that's where they get in trouble is implementation services and then their pricing model. There's just too many stories, but that's in general what their struggle is in that space.
Okay.
And it has been. And yet, I mean, they're a vendor. They've been around since, the early 90s.
Yeah.
When it was campus management, became Anthology. My understanding is when they're going to break this up, Blackboard is going to walk away with the assets and none of the debt. And a lot of the stuff's going to be on the Ellucian side, what they pick up and have to see from there. Ellucian doesn't have that same problem with implementation that don't have any people to do it or inconsistent methodology. So maybe it'll improve, who knows, but it's a challenge.
What do you feel, especially the current users of Anthology, students and all that, how should they feel or react about this? Because I was talking to some of the CIOs before this announcement. A lot of them were sort of like, yeah, whatever, this is going to happen. It's going to keep moving. Somebody's going to purchase them. There wasn't that much stress over it. What are you hearing?
It's hard to say where they're going to go because you have private equity involved, so everything's behind closed doors, and they're still negotiating. Remember, Ellucian is the stalking horse, which is they're going to put in a price they'd be willing to pay, at least an initial thing.
And we know the price.
Right. And now the
70
question
million.
Is somebody else going to come in with a better offer and try to buy it away? So I think, for existing clients, just hold your breath and just it's not going to change. People are buying an asset they're going to want to keep generating revenue with.
Yeah.
It also means the problems they've had with getting implementations done on time, on budget, that's probably not going to get any better, could get worse. But until it all settles down, you find out who's really going to buy them. I honestly, I don't know what Ellucian sees in buying them. They have such market share. They're Power Campus. They are killing that product off in a year, I guess, a year and a half, and go from there. And if people remember the fine print, a year and a half ago, they bought Tribal Group out of the UK, but that's pretty much been staying, I think, a little in Canada, but mostly in Europe. Yeah. So what do they see in it? What do they want to get? They obviously can get a customer base to protect themselves. So that's good if the price is right, but we'll have to see where they land. Yeah. My guess would be is Ellucian's a nice stable place to land. So they'll probably be okay, but the implementation support and services, we'll have to see how that turns out. Yeah. And you got to remember an awful lot of the people from the campus management ERP side almost are all ex-Ellucian execs.
Yeah,
As
you're right.
they've been hiring almost everybody away for 10 year 15 years from Ellucian, so
Yeah,
they know the game. Whether or not there's still players in the new world, who knows? But
yeah,
I mean, there's a risk something could go wrong, but for those clients, I would just say just relax a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I did a back the envelope calculation on based on the price that they've put in
Hmm.
the 70 million, and based on what we see with the valuation of others, they're basically assuming that 50%, even if 50% of these clients move away, they would still win because they're
Yep.
getting them at such a cheap price. And the odds of another company coming in and bidding more, and this is just me putting pieces
Yep.
together, the model of the stalking horse, which I knew nothing about, I had to read up on it, was basically saying you need to put a certain percentage, let's say 2% more than the last bid, and pay all the legal fees from the company paying the stalking horse. So odds are not that great that somebody else is going to come along.
Yeah. There's a disincentive, and face it, there's only so many people who want to own a student information system.
Yeah.
They're big, complex, expensive to maintain. Um, and so who wants to own another one? Ellucian's already in that business. They'll be down to just a couple, but picking another one's not as bad. But look at a Workday, a million years. What would Workday
Yeah.
want Anthology for? And I know nothing. Maybe they do, but
Yeah.
there's nothing really Anthology has that Workday student doesn't already have. And you start to look at who else would bid on this thing. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
Who
You're right.
knows?
Okay. Let's switch gears. From all your years of doing this, the consulting work and talking to institutions, what do you feel is the number one reason for an institution to decide to do this big change of a student information ERP? Is there a trigger that keeps coming back? Is it cloud? Is it old code? Is it they're really unhappy with the product?
Yes, it's a good consultant answer for you.
Great, next.
I mean, if you look at it, first of all the vendors are moving to SaaS over time, some more quickly than others. I mean, a lot of the Ellucian clients are scared that they'll be forced into Ellucian SaaS cloud stuff right away. And I don't get any sense from Ellucian that they're in any rush to pull the trigger and announce that the on-premises products are going to go away soon. Will they go away? Absolutely, at some point. But I don't see any of that in the near term future. I think those clients are safe kind of doing what they're doing. So then you look at it and say, you know, moving to the cloud means somebody else is managing, you know, you don't buy new servers anymore.
Hmm,
You don't have all these capital costs. And right now, so many schools are in trouble because they don't have capital dollars to spend on these things. So when you go
hmm,
in to say, "Hey, I need to replace my student information system server," and it's going to cost me 100 grand, they'll go get in line. The facilities guys, this building needs a new sprinkler system. This building over here, the pipes just cracked. We need to go do that. So you're fighting with all those capital kind of requirements. And so when you move up to the cloud, you got to handle operating budget, but it's an easier beast to do. And probably the most important for the ones that are smarter, it's a much more secure environment than being on campus.
yeah,
They've got 1,000 PhDs in all those, each and every one of those companies that's worrying about security and tracking and using AI to catch this stuff. When you're on campus, you got Tom and Joe, and
yeah,
they're pretty good, but they're also down the hallway fixing PCs sometimes when you're doing
yeah,
the script. Well-meaning, great people, but how do you keep up? So the security thing I think is driving a lot of them. And the last part is since COVID, almost everybody's been losing staff and shrinking. I don't have to have some staff that's worrying about backing up the data every night. I don't need staff that's got to do some of the technical, cleaning. You know, they're going to do the DBA services. So somebody go, do I need a DBA? My response is absolutely. They're the only people who know where your data is. So DBAs have a long, strong future in SaaS. They don't get to go in and play DBA controls on the data, but they'll understand the data better anyway. So that's don't do anything that makes your DBA think they should leave because you're really going to want them around.
yeah. It. I was at a conference last week, and it was an ERP conference. I got to meet a lot of great CIOs, and what you sort of mentioned, they're being pushed to go the cloud, to go the SaaS model. It's a no-brainer. And you clearly understand why a company wants to do this. They don't no longer need to support seven different versions of their product. They can, if they want to focus on AI, they can do it much more rapidly. Everything moves. It's perfect for them. For the institution point of view, especially the mid-sized to smaller institutions, they were all basically saying, Yeah, I would save on security, but I don't even have a security guy.
Right.
I would save on what they had a bunch of examples like this, and then they were saying, I don't have 2 million to move to the cloud, whatever that amount is. And then they say, and once I'm going to be a fully SaaS model, it's going to cost me more year per year. And they said, we don't even have the budget. So they're basically saying they're happy with the product they have now.
Right.
They don't want to move. And that was really what they were trying to do with the vendor, was say, can you confirm that you're going to be, we won't be pushed off for at least another, I don't know, 5 years or whatever it was. Are you seeing a lot of this?
Yeah, there's a lot of it kind of going, it's expensive to move. The license, I mean, remember, on-prem, you paid a bunch of money when you bought it, initial license, then you're paying a 20 to 25% of your annual maintenance, much lower annual number. And by the way, if you stop paying, you still own a license to use the software in perpetuity. After the first year or so, it looks pretty cheap. But you're still paying for all your servers. In the new environment, you start paying for them, the vendor who's turning around and they're using Amazon, servers, or they're using Azure servers, or whoever the heck, cloud vendor of the month club. But it's looking good. But I also say the number of times the conversation starts with, our board thinks we're highly in trouble because we're not already on the cloud. How do we get to the cloud?
Yeah.
And that's one of those reasons why people do it. A lot of times you see the board members are pushing them, who are typically coming from private corporations or public corporations. They see, yes, it's expensive, but it's worth it, blah, 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 blah. But you got to run the financials. You
Yeah.
absolutely got to run the financials.
Perfect. I'm going to push you to play 20 questions, it's lightning round. So I'm going to go through the main vendors, and if you can try in 1 and 2 minutes sort of go through their product and say what's great, what's not so great about them. So I'm putting you on the spot here, but hey.
Just before that,
yeah,
we do have a question in the chat, so
I'll
just read that off. What role can shared services or multi-tenant consorial approaches play to reduce the cost of SaaS versus minimum viable on-premises SIS? On-premise SIS. That makes sense if I read it again.
Yeah, just one more time, quickly.
I am very jet lagged. All right. What role can shared services or multi-tenant consorial approaches play to reduce the cost shock of SaaS versus minimum viable on-premise SISs?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of, at public institutions, it's more straightforward because you get state systems are saying, hey, we're all moving to a common platform. We're going to bulk buy it. The more you buy, the cheaper the price is. That rule of economics 101 still applies. So you're seeing that. Right now, you're seeing a whole bunch of small schools that are looking to be acquired or to acquire somebody else and saying, could we have multiple tenants in the same thing? And the answer is just, if you're in Workday, you have you got multiple tenants in your thing. By the way, some of which may not be schools, may be corporations or whatever. So there's some savings and stuff there. There's some bigger savings that may not be achievable by saying, could we go to a common staff to implement this at all the schools and then provide ongoing support? That shared services model looks good, has been successful in a few places, but it requires probably a year or two of planning before you pull the trigger on going to do it, because you got different schools with different goals and different executives, and go from there. A friend of mine, Claire Ramsbottom, she runs Colleges of the Fenway up in Boston, 6 small schools, all geographically property touching each other. And, we asked her, she's been doing this for 25 years, so she gets the consortium mode. I told people, call Claire. But what she'll tell you is that when you have multiple campuses involved, she has 6 of them. She says, every single year, I have at least one brand new president. Every single year, I have at least 1 or 2 new CFOs, 1 or 2 new provosts. And they all come in saying, I'm paying all this money. I could do this cheaper if I did it myself. And so we had worked with her years ago and got a memo of understanding that says, you got to give like 3 or 4 years notice to leave. She said, don't give me the notice. It's just go do some shopping, see what you can do. And they can never beat her, but she's constantly having to re-educate executives. And that turnover executives has seen, well, there was the CUSC consortium a couple of years ago that looked great, but it all fell apart and various new executives came in those 4 schools, different places, and shut it down. So I think there's great possibilities. People don't spend enough time saying, what are the roles and responsibilities? Who's doing what in this? Who's responsible? If you're the owner of this part, are my problems going to be as important to you as your own problems be there? So there's just things to be talked through and figure out. I'm a big fan of it, but I also see people jumping into stuff, and then how's that going to work is a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let's dig in. So I'm going to go alphabetically and not necessarily by size. I guess we have to do Anthology again because it's sort of the first one. So in 2 minutes, what's great, what's not so great?
They've got, first of all, every one of these vendors you're talking about, here's what they can all do. They can recruit students, they can enroll them, get courses set up, they can attend classes and put grades in, they can charge their bills, they get a pay, they do transcripts. They all do that basic amount of it. How they do it and what the functionality is where they're all on the edge. But really, there's hardly anybody on this. In fact, there's nobody on this who can't do those basics. So let's not get hung up on ourselves. I mean, some of these products I hate, but I go, I wouldn't change because it worked for you and you're happy. Architecturally, over a beer, we can have lots of conversations about such and such. Okay, so Anthology, the first one, I mean, their problem continues to be they have a bad reputation on installing their software. One, for meeting the prices that they say, here's an estimate, it's going to cost about this, and we saw lots of bids. Oh, it's going to be $500,000, $750,000 to put it in. And then, 2 years later, it's past $2 million and they're still not done yet. So that's been a problem for them. Having people who could actually come on their projects to work with you and support you, that's been a problem. So Anthologies is not really a software product problem or a quality problem. It's been a support for implementation, ongoing support. It's been where they've been challenged, and now everybody's going to freeze until they see where they land.
Okay.
For people looking at them, I can't imagine there's a lot of new sales in the next 12 months they're going to get. I also think that most of the schools they have, nobody should be running for the doors and saying, I need to replace this in the next 30 days.
Yeah.
Are you still enrolling students? Yeah. They still paying their bills? Yeah. You're still advising them and getting transcripts? Yeah. Then just relax and let's see where this lands.
Just as an FYI, at their conference this summer, there was a bunch of analysts, which I was one of them, and this was brought up as an issue, a long-standing issue, and they sort of pushed back by saying, tell me the institutions and we'll tell you these happened. They all started these implementations during the merger when Anthology became a new company. And from what I heard, they were sort of right in there. There was a bad bunch. The newer implementation seems to be going better, but there's some that have been trailing for years.
Yep.
Like big issues. So I don't know if this is all true, but anyways. Okay, next one on the list.
Same stories I hear.
Okay. Ellucian.
Ellucian, I mean, they've got huge market share. I'll start off with Colleague, not in alphabetical order, just it's on my notes. I mean, Colleague, they want everybody to go to the SaaS product. And Colleague SaaS, they came out with that first 3 or 4 years ago. And anybody who moves from on-prem to the cloud, there's a maturation period. There's getting it all working and figuring out how to make that work. So Ellucian's kind of past that point. I mean, architecturally, I think it's still got a lot of the vestiges of having been built in the, designed in the late 80s, early 90s. But going from there, it's fine. Their finance and HR product, what customers always tell me, on a scale of 0 to 10, where do you place them? 5. They're okay. Nobody jumps up and down on their finance and HR. Get to Banner, their biggest competitor that they merged with. Same thing. Their finance and HR is okay. Their student product, fairly mature. Been out there. Student SaaS, moving that to SaaS, though, all the Banner stuff to SaaS, that's gone a lot slower. That's much newer. I know St. John's recently went earlier this year after several years of working at it, getting help from Ellucian. But they haven't all got their act together on what's a project plan look like to do this and how do I move this along and all that. And the last part of them is the number of schools that at Power Campus are looking to go somewhere else other than Ellucian. Mm-hmm. Some are going, which is great, but a bunch of other ones don't. So that's giving some churn, but they knew that was going to happen. They knew they just couldn't afford to keep it going.
Yeah.
And so they're pretty good. Ellucian, some of their stuff's products are older, but you know what, man, they do the job.
Yeah. Next, Genzavar.
Okay. We don't see Genzavar much out in the market anymore. We invite them into RFPs. Every once in a while they come. The RFPs are not well written, so you don't hear about them. Their Gens of our One product, which is supposed to be take their student base of the old EX product and bring them to J1. Nobody seems to talk about that as much anymore. Nobody's excited by that term J1. It's now cloud services. I don't know. We're trying to get a briefing set up with them. We tend to get one-on-ones with the vendors every year. It appears that they're viewing, hey, our biggest future is getting all these clients off-prem and getting them to a hosted model.
Yeah.
Where you still do your own DBA services or move them to SaaS. But there's not a lot of new functionality and other stuff that come with those products. You're now running up an AOL.
Yeah.
They were on IBM hosting, and now I think they're going to Google hosting, something like that. So you don't see a lot out there. Not a lot of people jumping up and down. And support, it can take days to get an answer back on a problem. Some people have told me weeks. I've heard days. I don't know what the right answer is, but there's been delays in that. So ongoing support has been a challenge that they haven't been able to afford to step up to, it looks like.
Okay. And there's all this talk about, it gets personal. I apologize for doing this, but there seems to be a divorce happening from the owners, and that seems to be, there's a black cloud there that people keep bringing back in questions anyway that I get.
Yeah, they've done a slaughter of some of the old management, got them out of there, but then they brought a new management who may not have much skills in higher ed. Higher ed's a different market than selling to a manufacturing industry or a bank. But the old people who ran the place were not exactly the people that you don't want to consider your best friends either. They were sharks. And but so don't know where all that lands. I think they're still in the process of rechurning themselves, figure out what they want to be next. And so, but again, there's products that the CX customers have to find a new home. So a lot of them are jumping somewhere else. But yeah, the rest of them just bide your time and see what happens.
Okay. Oracle.
Okay, so a couple of things. Oracle has a couple of products. Oracle has the old PeopleSoft suite, which they still have hundreds and hundreds of customers on. Personal opinion, and I've told this about anybody at Oracle who would listen, you should never stop selling PeopleSoft. It's probably the most mature and full function student system on the market. Better than a Workday, better than various things. But it is what it is, right? Although they're giving this rolling 11 years of support.
Yeah.
That's gone out to, the 2036 now, I think. And they're going to probably roll that a few more times till they pull the plug. Their finance and HR products are top notch. They can fight it out with the best of them and do well, if that's all it is. Their problem right now is their student product's been pushed out a few times. There's some Valiant schools who are beta customers for them that are now sitting because the last delay was like a 2.5 year delay, and they should be ready. The last code drop, I think, is June or July of 27.
This is to have a full functioning SIS.
Or as much functioning as you'll need at the beginning, and they'll go from there. So it's been a challenge. Most of those are HES schools, the small private liberal arts, 1,000 to 5,000 kind of thing. Although there's bigger HES schools. There's a couple of schools like Rutgers and Tennessee that have signed on the wagon, but they're not going to be there. So if the last load is the summer of 27, then hardly anybody's going to go live until probably January of 28. Oracle doesn't want to hear that, but that's the problem. You drop a whole bunch of code in my lap, I am not going to production on it the next week unless you're crazy. You got to be able to test it and give them feedback because this is code no one's ever run. I think they're going to have a great product when it gets there, but it's delaying in the market, and Workday's really zooming along compared to them on the space.
Okay. Populi.
Populi, we don't see all that often, but it's doing pretty well. I mean, it's done a lot of the small religious schools. Yeah. It's done a lot of those 300, 400, 500 students. It's web-based. It's got a pretty decent reputation for support. It's got a great price markets. It's really dirt cheap to get. Yeah. So you're seeing a lot of smaller schools saying, like Power Campus schools, are sometimes looking at that. And it's a good source because Power Campus really started off as a single server student. Everything ran on one PC, often a desktop, and keep the pricing down. So it's pretty attractive. We don't see them that much because we tend to get involved with larger schools, but we've done a bunch of work with HES schools, so we're talking to them. So Populi is a really intriguing one. We'll see where it goes.
Perfect. Thesis.
Thesis used to be the student arm that was with Unit 4. And before they got bad, it was Three Rivers, their CAMS product out of St. Louis.
What
And
was
the
their
development
product?
still, pardon me?
What was the product from the one that was running in the States, especially colleges?
CAMS.
CAMS, thank you.
CAMS. In fact, we one of our clients, American University of Paris, we helped them put it in over in Paris. They do American financial aid, so you got to be able to do something. And it's a good basic product, blocking and tackling and all that. They went and built a new system, brand new system from the ground up, great new system and all. And they installed it at 2 American schools, and it failed miserably. And they pulled out of the U.S. market for that newer, fancier product. But what they've done is to take the old CAMS product, take everything you didn't like about it. They say they've updated and addressed those things and add some more functionality. They've renamed it Elements. So they're in the market, but we've kind of stopped calling them to say, do you want to bid on this? Because every time we've asked in the past, they say no. That may, after today, my phone may ring with lots of places they want to get in the business. It's a good basic system. It does all the basics. Is it exciting? Does it have all sorts of AI and that stuff? Not really. But even some of the AI I see out there are just toys.
Yeah. And the last one on our list is Workday.
Yeah, Workday's interesting because Workday, like you're hearing, well, their student system, their financial aid's not working or this or that. There's all these made up stories. And usually I go back to Oracle or Ellucian because they're the best rumor mills in the world. Here, we just did a briefing with them. So here's where they are. There are 650 US schools running at least one of the major modules of Workday: finance, HR. You can't run students without finance and HR. So you've got a lot of that. Hess, you think of them as being smaller schools. They're not really, but they tend to go up to about 5,000. There are 61 Hess schools that have installed or are installing Workday Student right now. They've done finance and HR. That's a lot of schools.
Yeah.
That's a lot of schools. They don't have that many schools on the other Hess thing with DriveStream and Oracle, which, by the way, is pretty impressive what DriveStream's done with Oracle and that small school suite. It's really impressive. Across all segments, they've got 85 students live on Student Live and 85 more that probably go live by next summer. Yeah. So they're really kind of cranking. And their financial aid, the big issue you may see there is, well, they don't have institutional management. Guess what? Neither does Oracle. Banner has it because College Board that owns it licensed them. And by the way, College Board licensed PeopleSoft to run. So PeopleSoft can do institutional methodology, but they've refused the last few years to do anything to let anybody buy it. So there's like this captive market now. The challenge would be, as you saw, they went to the cloud. It was a failure. They pulled it back. We're staying on-prem. And now you've got an environment where you're going to put your student system up in the cloud and all these fancy servers and have to come back to the campus to get that data. 2 problems. There can be performance issues. And the second thing is, financial aid has the most confidential data you don't ever want a hacker to get their hands on.
Yeah.
And putting it up in the cloud, you say, okay, I can sleep at night because they're worrying about it. It's on campus. It's not going anywhere. So I don't know what the College Board power phase people are going to do about that or work through that, but it raises a whole bunch of questions in your mind. Do you stick with them or not? But institutional management has been the one functionality that they refused to license to any of the cloud vendors. So,
are you hearing about other smaller vendors? Because we see these small vendors where a lot of growth is happening. Like one company, and I mentioned them, Student First, is simply because this was the old founder of campus management. And that's
Student First is pretty impressive initially. We've done a briefing with them. We're going to do some more. We're trying to get them in a bid cycle for schools. I mean, it's aimed at smaller schools. It's not aimed at 10,000 student schools. But what we've seen, it looks great. The best thing it's got going for it is David Meek, who's the CEO, was the guy who built campus management before he sold it over to the PE guys. And it ultimately became, what we see today as Anthology. So that one looks pretty impressive. Yeah. But you got to get in and here's my problems, here's my requirements, give me customized demos. So we got to go from there. There's another company, Sarasoft, and their academia product.
Yep.
Also looks very interesting. In fact, Gartner kind of rated them up there too, I noticed. And I've talked to them for a while. We're meeting with them at EDUCAUSE next week. But that's another one that's intriguing. We haven't seen it installed, but when you talk through it, you see demonstrations. It's a pretty full functioning. They've been around selling more in India and some of that. They're an Indian-based company, but they're ones I looked at.
Yeah, there's
Yep.
another one. There's actually a question here about a return on investment on a product, One World SIS.
We had a client that moved off it a few years ago, and then it was just lacking everything. It was several years. It was a while ago. They now claim to be back, and they've filled out the functionality. It's hard to say until you see them in an RFP process where you
Yeah.
get competitive pricing and all that. It's hard to say. But just so this comes up 3 or 4 times a year, I save everybody some trouble.
They had a
Salesforce does.
they were a big presence a few years back at Educause, if I remember, and they were
Right.
putting pieces of different products that they had, their portal, their CRMs and all that, and building an SIS around it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it never really all came together, which is where some of it fell apart. The other comment I was just gonna make quickly in time. Every once in a while, the salespeople from Salesforce say, we have an SIS, we have an SIS. Go to get the Salesforce. They have an SIS education something. And it's been rated in a few of these certing services, not by Gartner, but as being there. They don't have an SIS. They have one partner, Rio Education, great people. We talked to them on the phone. They're out of Australia.
Hmm.
We talked to them probably a year and a half ago. They didn't have a clue about how to do American financial aid. And that's kind of a showstopper for if you're going to come to this
Yeah.
market. And what are you going to do about financial aid? And we said, hey, get a hold of Ivy, get a hold of College Board, get a hold of one of these other companies. But Salesforce itself does not have an SIS. And so I wish salespeople would say that, because clients going to go on these long rants only to find something. Okay.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you a final question, and then we might jump into questions as they come. This keeps coming back very often with maybe larger schools, but how do you advise institutions to balance configuration versus customization? So basically, do you bend the process or do you bend the software?
Well, with everybody going to SaaS, it's almost an easy answer these days, because you can't touch the software. You're precluded from that. So now the configurations are better, and some of them just took the same product on-prem and they put up SaaS and locked you away from it. Some of those products have holes in them, and how they're going to go from there. You're seeing a couple of them, and just the big guys like a Workday, their Extend product, are giving the ability to call an external module, maybe you've written on your own, do the work and bring the answers back in, and you still can maintain all the patches and all that stuff. So that's a pretty intriguing model, but it's not for the light of heart. You got to be able to write custom software. You now own it and have to maintain it. If the integrations break, you got to do it. But in some cases, you can do that, and bigger schools have the resources to do it. Smaller schools, not so much. So, and the configuration stuff. I mean, when you're making those modifications, I would say 7 years from now, and all the existing executives are gone, there's new executives. Are they still going to need that change? You ought to really question hard. Do I really need to customize that thing? And sometimes they says, well, that's just the way it is. That's our policies or whatever. So,
Emily, do we have any questions?
We do. And of course, if anybody has any other questions, please keep them coming. We have a question on if there is a sweet spot or a metric that schools should use to figure out how much to spend on an SIS.
No. I mean,
we have some data on that, but
Yeah.
there's nothing. It's a range more than anything else.
Right.
But I'll let you answer, Charlie.
When we do it, we tend to do it a range based on similar size schools and similar complexity. I mean, if you do have grants and contracts, you're not going to be somebody who look at the cost of that and say, well, we're half the size, so it's half the price for us to do, in a private small liberal arts school. The needs are different. So, but we tend to look at other things in your area when we're working on projects. We do roadmaps for schools. Here's about what it would cost, and it's in this range, because it depends how hungry they are at that moment and that stuff. But I haven't seen any good metrics. Everybody would love to see them, but every vendor does it differently, and depending how aggressive they are. But we worked on a bid recently, I won't say where Workday's software pricing was significantly less than colleague SaaS, which is unheard of, impossible, could never happen. in the cloud. They can price whatever they want to do. So that's some of the stuff you have to look for. So call your friends and neighbors, find somebody who's done it, go around EDUCAUSE or go around the HES conference in a few more weeks after this, and talk to people to kind of get some idea of what was the projected spend, and actually the more important question, and what was the real spend. Because some of the schools come right on target with numbers they get, vendors right, and some of them, they give you a low ball price to get as the lowest price, but then with change orders, you're paying a ton.
Yeah. Emily, I'm just reading quickly through so you can correct me. There's mention about Salesforce SIS. This has been coming back for years. There's different vendors that have tried doing it. I remember an Australian company also doing it. Have you heard?
That's the one I was talking about, Rio. I was talking about this earlier, Rio Education. Nice people. And it sounds like they got interesting. A lot of their schools tend to be vocational schools, not so much 4-year stuff. And Michelle, you keep I've seen it. You keep saying Tundra. I've never seen them, haven't heard them. Doesn't mean they're not there. And I'll look for them at EDUCAUSE next week. Yeah. So I guess you work for Tundra or you're using Tundra, but we haven't seen them. They haven't come up anywhere. I want more vendors. More vendors means there's a cap on pricing. More vendors means there's a push for innovate to differentiate. Yeah. So I love more vendors coming. I'd love to see Salesforce in that space. But so far, the only one that they've told us about a year ago, we did a briefing with them. Where's your student system? And the only one they told us about was the Australia company, which is a partner of theirs, and it's on the thing. And we called them up, and at that point, a year ago, maybe a little longer, not too much longer, they really hadn't done anything with financial aid yet, which was a real problem in the U.S. market.
Okay. In the comments, they're mentioning Tundra. I'm assuming this is the same company.
Yeah, that's what I just talked. That's the one I just talked about. Yeah.
They're saying it's U.S. based.
That's fine. Do they have American financial aid? Have they partner with somebody? How are they doing? That's the questions. And we are out constantly. We wander around EDUCAUSE and we'll see who we talk to out there.
Yeah. I'd be curious to be at that meeting too. Because it's one question that I get often from the institutions. Have you heard Salesforce? And there's these rumors around it, but seeing something concrete.
They announced their Salesforce education, which was this model, maybe just a data model. We're not sure what. And again, we've talked to their executives every couple of years just because. Have you done anything since the last we talked? And they talk to their partners. Say, well, great. Is there a partner you're strong with? And again, a year ago, the only one they told us about was the one out of Australia. And we called them up, had a great guy, really nice people. Seem to have a good product. They're not trying to oversell what they can deliver. I mean, I was impressed with them, but they hadn't done anything in the U.S. at that point. Maybe there's this newer product in the market, or Salesforce didn't tell us about, or whatever. Quick Canadian market. It's pretty much all the people we talked about. Yeah. You can get the thesis student management, that fancier product that troubles in the US. You can buy that. We can't buy that here. You might be able to get Travel Group, which got bought a year or so ago by Ellucian, but we're not seeing that in the US. Maybe they're selling that in Canada. We've met them a few times. They're also pretty good. They had some real struggles because they oversold at University of British Columbia. Travel Group got in trouble over there. But for small, even medium-sized schools, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. The other players are basically the same as you see in the US. So the Ellucians, the Oracle, they sort of run. There's not much Anthology in Canada, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. We're at the end, Charlie. I really appreciate your time.
We have one more question very quickly, just before cutting you off. We're asking about any thoughts on SIS Global based on Dynamics.
Oh, Microsoft Dynamics?
Yes.
Microsoft Dynamics is a pretty good small company, small school finance and HR system.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of it. So that's what Anthology was selling. That's what Ellucian for Power Campus was selling, and that kind of thing. So yes, their challenge was like out of the blue with like not much warning to the public, they pulled out of the payroll market. And suddenly schools are scrambling to come up with, what do I do for payroll? You shut that module down. So there was a lot of running around. The Anthology guys came across somebody they liked. So I think they're partnering with them now. That's, somebody who's compatible with Dynamics, but a competitor to Dynamics. So that was the payroll piece was a major hole. They're still there. They're still pretty viable. This is not a package. Their packages are aimed at small, straightforward institutions. It's not going to an R1 or any of those kind of things. But if you're not big on grants and contracts, don't have a lot of that stuff. If you don't have unions on the HR side and payroll side, it's pretty good. After that, you got to look at it for what it's worth. The other part of it is you need to have the integrations. And that's one where, just an example, Anthology again is selling it, but you couldn't find anybody inside who could tell you how to integrate into the finance and HR payroll system that they sold them. So,
yeah. Final question, because we sort of touched upon it, is what's your opinion of Workday Finance and HR? You did mention there are a lot of schools, about 500-600 that are using it.
I put Workday, I think the two strongest for big institutions, the two strongest packages for finance and HR, Oracle and Workday. Let them fight it out. They're both really full function. They've got good reputations. Workday is phenomenal. The edge what Workday has is they have a student system they could sell right now and get up and running with it. Oracle still is got a couple of years to go till that gets out the door. So that's causing some schools to say, I'm going to wait and see what it looks like, and then make the decision. So there's a lot of schools doing that. And other ones are going, I can't wait anymore. I gotta pick a vendor and move along. So I think that's where the Workday numbers have jumped up on the number of installations they've got or number of schools. But the Oracle and Workday Finance HR are both top-notch products.
Nice.
We have one question, which is hopefully a yes or no question, and then we can say goodbye to everybody. Did Tribal Group really get bought out?
That's probably a good question. Everything we read it was, but then they weren't in the United States. So honestly, we stopped following them until every once in a while we check around, they're still there. My impression was Ellucian bought them or bought a majority share in it, but I don't really know.
Yeah.
After they pulled out of North America or out of the US, we stopped following them.
Okay, this is a rumor, but somebody at Ellucian told me they were going to purchase him and it fell through. Something happened at the centrally at the company. And I don't know, somebody outbid him or something happened, but they were going through it, but it didn't happen.
That's good to know.
And it wasn't on the Ellucian side. They really wanted to purchase him.
Yep. Well, and they had an international presence, which Ellucian banner has in the Middle East, but not too many other places.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks again, Charlie. Always enjoyable. I look forward to seeing you next week at Educause. I will drop by your booth. I know you guys are there. Anything else you want to add? What you guys are doing? What new services you're offering?
We're doing an awful lot now with data cleanup before you kick off. Get your data together, and then sometimes we're helping doing the migration and stuff. So that whole data governance, data cleanup, how do you want your data to be treated in the new world is there. But we'll be there next week. We got a booth as always. So anybody on the call here who wants to talk more about this stuff, get a hold of me or one of my guys at the booth, and we'll get you to the right ones. And we look forward to talking to anybody else who has any questions. And thanks for the invite, Justin.
It's appreciated. Thank you very much, everybody. If you have time, you can follow our newsletter. Charlie, once in a while, does, in the past, has published a few articles for us. So he makes us look really good and smart. But other than that, we'll see you at the next one. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you again.